I know it's difficult to get distracted right when your show starts, but I looked up at these TVs. Somebody's watching the Brady Bunch? Who's watching the Brady Bunch in here? Best guess. Personality on the station that would watch Brady Bunch in their free time is... gotta go with Kreckman. I'm gonna go Kreckman.
Really? Not Moj?
No, Moj. Moj doesn't strike me as a Brady Bunch kind of guy. Anywho, this is, I believe, to be a good place to be in. This isn't going to be one of those situations where the longer the week goes on, the more I feel like the Broncos are going to upset the Eagles. It's not going to feel that way, but I am feeling better about one thing in particular. You go back to the game last week. Again, different caliber of opponent that you face. The difference between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles, at least right now, is about the same difference as playing against Ohio State or playing against Washington State. Like, they are just entirely different teams on entirely different paths. But if there is an encouraging detail, especially with you offensively, it's this. We saw at the beginning of the year struggles when it mattered most. You weren't good on third down. You weren't good at end-of-game situations. And that's where you really got burnt. So, what's the encouraging part that I'm talking about? If you go back to last week's game, Bo Nix was at his best when the plays mattered the most. So they're 8 of 14 on third down. That's great. Here's 3 touchdowns Bo Nix is responsible for. The first one is a red zone, 3rd down and 5. Bo Nix takes off on a scramble, sees daylight, and runs it in the end zone for the first touchdown. End of half, 3rd down, 12 seconds on the clock. He makes the dart of a throw to Courtland Sutton. Gets him in the end zone before half. And then I know the game was a bit out of hand here, but again, it's a 3rd and 5 in the red zone. And Bo Nix makes a throw to R.J. Harvey, who gets in. It must be that way again if you want to beat Philly. And make no mistake, Philadelphia is not some sort of team that has completely pasted everybody they've played. They typically aren't like that in general. Don't get me wrong, they can rip a team apart occasionally. But a lot of games come down to, can you make this play at this time? Because if you want to know an interesting stat about the Eagles, I heard Adam Schefter, he was on with, I don't know if it was the McAfee show or just one of McAfee's dudes. But he said this, that despite being unbeaten, the Eagles have been outgained by 327 yards this year so far. That's the 4th worst margin in the NFL, and yet they're undefeated at 4-0. Well, then how do you get there? How does a team that's gotten outgained by that margin, in average through 4 games now, what would that be, about 80 yards? Little north of 80 yards? Again, that's 6 o'clock math. That is correct, though. You're outgained by 80 yards a game, but you're 4-0. Well, how? Because when they need to do something, they do it. I'll give you an example. This is how I see the game this weekend. And I'm trying to basically, this game could be one of those turning point kind of games. No, the Broncos don't feel like they have a ton to lose in a game like this. You are not expected to win. I think even the homeriest of Homer fans are going to tell you that they think the Broncos lose this weekend, because you probably should. The Eagles have won 20 of their last 21 games, including the postseason. They've been almost untouchable. So how do you beat them? You have to play as clean a game as possible. That's how. For whatever reason, they don't go out there and blow your doors off. Like, maybe not this year, but last year when you play against Baltimore, you know you could be in for a rough day. You play Buffalo this year, you know that you could lose by 30 points. You play a team like Detroit this year, you know you could lose by 30 points. Philly doesn't do that to you, typically. They can, but it's not usual for them. They will grind you out and beat you more like a boa constrictor does. It's just that slow, occasional tighter squeeze over time. And then all of a sudden, you got no more air, and it's over. Play as clean a game as you can. That means this: limit penalties. Don't commit turnovers. No special team screw-ups, which has been a repeated problem this year. Be good on third down. Capitalize when you're in the red zone. Keep time of possession in your favor.
Oh, so, that's all. That's all they got to do.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Those 2 or 3 things, huh?
These categories are the things that wins you. I'm not saying you need all of them, but these are the difference makers in Philly. And I bring those up for this reason. Penalties have been a problem all year. It's been an issue for the Broncos. If they were to all of a sudden stop doing that, it would be, for what we've seen after a month, out of character. Turning the ball over. They haven't been like awful in this department, but certainly worse than last year thus far. You talk about just giveaways that the Broncos have had this season. One thing they did really well was take care of the football. They got 6. That is tied for 7th worst in the league. Do you know how many times Philadelphia's turned the ball over? Time. Once. By the way, teams with the least turnovers in the league, just so we're all on the same page here. Buffalo, Kansas City, Philly all have 1. Detroit, Green Bay, Tampa, and Washington all have 2. I think those teams all have something in common. They're pretty good. So, I mean, in all of that, you got to limit the turnovers, obviously. The special teams errors, huge problem for the Broncos this year. I think last week, correct me if I'm wrong, texters, I don't think that there was a moment last week where there was a huge special team blunder. But it's been a repeated problem this year where you've messed something up. You've lined up offsides on a 4th and 5. You have missed a kick. You've had a hold on what, like, you've had repeated instances. You've muffed a punt. Oh, by the way, just as a quick side note, something we didn't discuss yesterday, Nelly, help me out. When they punted to Marvin Mims and he called for a fair catch and he bobbled it and had it ripped away as the ball was in midair, how is that not a turnover? What do you mean I can let him just juggle the ball 15 times without touching him?
No, I had that same thought of, if you bobble the ball 3 times, I feel like fair catch doesn't count anymore. Yeah, once it bobbles the first time, it's fair game. Then you throw in 2, 3, 4 more times. Absolutely, I think that should have counted as a turnover. Like, there's your special teams blunder. The
fair catch is I can't touch you, and to me that means I can't touch you until you touch that football. In which, if you bobble it, we're right back in business. So that was just an aside. But Be good on third down. Well, they were last week, but they haven't been all year. You see where I'm going with this. The things that you need in order to beat Philadelphia are a lot of the things that separate the elite teams from the good teams and stuff that you've struggled with so far. But the good news is the last time you put a product out on the field, all of those categories were better. Everything I just mentioned was like basically an A in the game against Cincinnati. Can you continue that heading into a week against a lot tougher opponent?
And I'm just giving you a hard time, but it did seem like you're saying, all right, so here's what the Broncos need to do to beat the Eagles. They got to play well on offense. They got to run the ball. They got to pass the ball. They got to play well on defense. They got to contain the run game with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. They can't have any mistakes on special teams. They're going to have to move the ball through the ground, on the ground and through the air. They're going to have to score more points than the other team.
Yeah.
Like, in order to beat the Eagles, they have to do everything.
All I'm saying
everything, everywhere, all at once, perfectly.
There's a difference. There's a difference between, like, you guys need to play totally out of character in order to get a win, and you guys just need to play clean. If trying to think of the right example here. Okay, if Tennessee is playing against Philadelphia in Philly this weekend, Nelly, they can play as clean a game as they want. It ain't going to matter. Like, they would have to play one of those two teams. Either the Eagles would have to or Tennessee would have to play so out of character of what they are as a football team. It's the only way you tip the scales. That's it. Denver doesn't need to do that. They're a good football team. They don't need to play totally out of character. They just can't be dumb. And that's why those categories, those are the dumb categories, those ones I brought up. Like, no special teams mistakes. Don't be stupid on special teams. Don't turn the ball over. Football 101. When you are at a deficit, you are not allowed to give the opposing team extra opportunities. And that's what I'm getting at. This isn't a battle between two teams that are in totally different weight classes. Are the Eagles better? Yes. Are they, like, assuredly better? Yes. But there is not this giant chasm between these two teams where you're playing in two different leagues. You play a clean game, you're going to be in this at the end, as evidenced by everybody else Philly's played this year. But can you clean that stuff up that you've been messing up in the past? And the good news, we'll get to this a little bit later. Sean Payton is typically a slow starter to the season, and then his team finds a rhythm. Call it not a lot of reps in preseason, call it whatever you want. But that first month always seems to be a little bit more of a slog than the rest of the year. So we get to that in just a little bit. 303-504-0925. Shop Mazda text line, one price, one person, 1 hour. Watched a lot of baseball yesterday. And we can talk about that as the show goes on, but it felt like there were 3 games that were all just, if you scored a run, you felt like you had a chance to win. And then the Dodgers took the field and decided that it was going to be Ohtani and Hernandez hitting moonshots the entire game, and the game was over before it started. So we'll get to that in a bit as well. But when we return, because everything's thrown off this week with a little bit of a weird thing of Monday Broncos games. We're pushing stuff back. College football stock up, stock down next. All right, typically on Tuesdays, everything pushed back a day because of the Broncos' Monday night game. So, college football stock up, stock down. We always start with the quarterbacks, Nelly. Stock up. Yeah, it's Dante Moore. It's what Oregon does. They always find a quarterback that just produces. I think it's part of the beast that they've built there. It's part of having a really good roster. It's part of having Nike money. It's part of a whole bunch of different stuff. Dante Moore, though, sophomore, huge win over Penn State. He was 29 of 39 for 248 yards, 3 touchdowns. He already has 14 on the year. He's probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Maybe Mendoza has something to say about that at Indiana. But he's a star. And this is just in a long line and a long lineage of if you start at quarterback at Oregon, you're going to produce and you're going to be successful. Like, you can just going through the names in my head between Dante Moore, Dylan Gabriel, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert. Then you keep going like way back. You got the Mariotas. You got even guys like Jeremiah Masoli was good. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It feels like they all just put up numbers. And Dante Moore is going to do this now as well. Completing 75% of his passes on the year. And there's a difference that separates him and that Oregon team from another that I'd like to discuss. You know, kind of like the team that they were playing on the opposite side of the field last weekend, which brings us to quarterback stock down. I'm done with everything Penn State. I'm over it. Whether it's their quarterback play, whether it's their head coach, whether it's their hype, whether it's their whatever else. I saw Penn State, where did they start the season in the AP poll? It was something like 4th or whatever. And I just looked at it and I just go, yeah, I don't buy it. Because this happens every year. Everybody tells me how good Penn State's supposed to be, and then they just don't. Now, they played well last weekend. I don't want to give guys like James Franklin too much grief. It's not as if they went out there and just got boat raced by Oregon, and it was like, oh my God, can you believe how separate these two teams were? It was a double overtime game, so I'm giving them credit. But at the same time, Penn State, unlike Oregon, never seems to have that quarterback, ever. And I have been saying this about Drew Aller. I think the first one of these that we did, these stock up, stock downs that we did before the season started, I was reading an article about how Drew Aller is going to be a first-round pick. And I'm like, look, I'm not some big-time scout or whatever, but what do people see in that? Because I'll give you a number, and this is the one that I think really matters. Drew Aller, who in the game last week, it was 14 of 25 for 137 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. I want to present to you a stat. And this is about when you play that level of big-time college football, you are going to be up against the best of the best, which, by the way, a little bit later I want to get to if the Big Ten has surpassed the SEC as the best conference in the country. But you're Penn State. You play in the Big Ten. You know the heavy hitters that are in there. You know the competition you're going to be facing. In his last 7 ranked games as a starting quarterback, Drew Aller has failed to throw for 200 yards in 6 of them. In his last 7 ranked games, Drew Aller has 8 touchdown passes and 6 picks. Just never going to do it. You play against teams like Ohio State. You play against Oregon. You play against Michigan from the last couple of years. You play against any of these top-tier SEC teams in the college football playoff. That's just not going to get it done. And they're a very talented team elsewhere. Like, they have a lot of talent across that field. But if your quarterback can't rise to the occasion, you stand no chance. And I've been like a skeptic on Drew Aller virtually his entire tenure there, because I think he's been there for about 3 years now as the starter. But it's just never seemed to have gotten better, and he's just not a big game riser. So he gets a stock down. Big 12 team stock up. Let's getting pretty slim pickings right now in the Big 12 for teams that I want to give stock ups to. I suppose I'll give it to Arizona State. They beat TCU 27-24, their second straight win by that 27-24 score. Look, their only loss has been to Mississippi State, and so I'll give them a little bit of grace on that. I don't think they're nearly as good as last year. Even keeping the same quarterback, it just doesn't look the same. Maybe Scadaboo's somebody that just really was a difference maker for him within that offense. So they're not as good as last year, but they might be good enough for the Big 12. They might be good enough to win that again. But I think that's more of a referendum on who the Big 12 is as opposed to who Arizona State is. But they get the stock up. Let's go Big 12 team stock down. I don't know why I keep going to this well of I think Arizona's going to finally have a year that kind of opens up for them. I just thought having Noah Fafita back, experienced quarterback, got some talent, would maybe like be a boost for a down year in the Big 12, and they just got worked by Iowa State. It's not that they lost to them. They were supposed to lose. They went in that game as an underdog. It's how they lost. They lost 39-14. Wasn't even a game. And it was their first loss of the year, but God, did they get just wrecked. Again, I thought Fafita would be somebody that is a difference maker between them in a down Big 12 year, and it just hasn't been the case, and I just don't think it will be. It's one loss on the year, but I'm pretty down on Arizona just from the way that game looked against Iowa State. So they get the stock down. National team stock up. Ole Miss. You could go a couple different directions, but I thought that win over LSU was huge. And LSU, remember, Brian Kelly has been really pissy with people when he steps to a podium after a win because they're scoring like 17 points and winning games. And the reason why people are asking that question, and this is why it's going to be a bad look now when you go back and see Brian Kelly yelling about people saying, hey, the offense wasn't great. I mean, you did win, but... And he goes, well, isn't that the point to win the football game?
What is wrong with you?
The point in discussing that is when you play elite competition week after week, scoring 17 points ain't going to do the job. Welcome Ole Miss to the discussion. It's exactly what happened. LSU put up a really awful point total again, less than 20 points, and Ole Miss made them pay. Now, to Ole Miss's credit, and God, are they fun to watch. I mentioned this guy in the quarterback stock up from last week, but if you haven't watched Trevor Chambliss play quarterback for them, first of all, it's such a cool story. Second of all, it's his third straight game of 300 yards. He's ran for 250 over the last 3 games. He's a do-it-all kind of quarterback, and he was playing Division II football last year at Ferris State, who's a very good team, by the way, in Division II. Obviously, they played against School of Mines. But he played Division II. He stepped into an SEC role, took the starting quarterback job midseason, and is not going to let it go because he continues to win against good competition. He beat the number 4 team in the country, for crying out loud. They're a really, really fun team to watch, and I'm a Kiffin guy. I think Lane Kiffin's funny. When he's not being an ass, he's being funny. And I give credit to Lane Kiffin because he is a very, very smart and productive head coach. And he always kind of has been. Hasn't been without his issues, but he is a very, very smart coach. They get the stock up. National team stock down. I'm going to give it to Washington. The Huskies are a team that they've been okay since that Natty appearance with Michael Penix from a few years back. They lost to Ohio State this weekend. That's not a big deal. Everybody loses to Ohio State. But they struggled with Colorado State, remember, in that first week. Their quarterback, DeMond Williams, he's just not very trustworthy yet. I base a lot of this stuff in college football off the quarterback because these guys are, I think, almost more than in the NFL, these giant separators between teams. He's got 2 touchdown passes, Williams does, between the Colorado State, the UC Davis, and Ohio State games. 2. He's not Penix, and they need more production from that position to compete for a Big Ten title. Because you know who doesn't have that problem? Anybody who's near the top of that conference. They don't have that issue. And so, if he doesn't step his game up, Washington's just going to be toiling away sort of in that upper middle of the Big Ten. But it's just their offense isn't potent enough right now to be a contender. Heisman stock up. So if you're new to this game, what I do with the Heisman, I don't go with the same guys all the time. Like, is it going to be like last year? It was like, is it going to be Travis Hunter? Stock up. I mean, it was always going to be Travis Hunter. So I kind of use this to highlight other guys. I'm going to give you one. In Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State, he is putting together a phenomenal season. And if he can continue to do this production, and let's say Arizona State goes on some run like they did last year in the Big 12 and they make the college football playoff, who knows? Maybe he can find himself somewhere in the discussion. But despite the loss, despite what they've faced so far this year, Jordan Tyson has 7 touchdowns already. He's got 39 catches, almost 400 yards. Again, if ASU goes on a run, who knows? Maybe if he keeps up the production, this will continue. You can continue to have him at least surrounding that conversation with how good he's been. But I just want to highlight him because he's having a phenomenal season. Let's go Heisman stock down. So Grant Nussmeier was always a sexy pick for this because he's playing for a good team in LSU. But I think it's been proven, and we were just talking about earlier, Brian Kelly in postgame press conferences over the course of this year, he's been frustrated when he's asked about the offense, but it's very clear what people are asking about. They're asking about Grant Nussmeier. And is he playing well enough? So he gets frustrated because he's defending him, saying he doesn't want all this heat on his QB. But their offense just hasn't done enough, and Nussmeier hasn't done enough. The loss to Ole Miss last week because he only put up 19 points. And outside of a Southeast Louisiana win, he has 4 touchdowns and 3 picks against Clemson, Louisiana Tech, and Florida. Oh, Clemson, Louisiana Tech, Florida, and Ole Miss. 4 touchdowns and 3 picks in those 4 games. It's not going to do it. And it's certainly not going to win you a Heisman. You know, they failed to put up 23 points in any of those 4 games that I mentioned as well. I always say this. The Heisman isn't just about the winning. It's the winning with the stat sheet stuffing. It has to be. And I think that already this season, Nussmeier's played his way out of that discussion. Upset of the week.
Oh, my God.
So it should be Virginia's win over Florida State because that's a massive win, but I think Virginia's pretty good. I'm going to give it to Bama over Georgia for this reason. I wrote Bama off. When they lost early this year, and it looked like Kalen DeBoer, who yet again lost to another unranked team in his short time as Alabama's head coach, you're just like, all right, well, you know what? This Bama thing is done. These guys are dead. For them to get that win over Georgia is crazy. Like, it's such a massive win for them because it puts them right back in the discussion now. Here's what's funny. Bama, Georgia, whoever loses that game typically, like almost 100% of the time now, has no effect on their season. Losses are supposed to matter. It hasn't mattered in Bama, Georgia for like 6 years. So it's not something that kills Georgia, but I think it solidifies that Bama is still there, and there's still a problem you got to deal with. Now, they got a really difficult stretch coming up. They play against Vanderbilt, which, look, Vandy is no joke. We all know that with Diego Pavia. They play against Missouri at Missouri after that. Then it's Tennessee at South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma. That's a tough stretch of games that they're going to be dealing with coming up. So I don't think, Like, could Bama win all of them? They could. I think it'd be difficult because they still aren't quite at that Saban-esque level. But I give them full credit. I think that's a huge win over Georgia. So there you go. That is college football stock up, stock down. We do it every week following the college football weekend.
Now, Brett, if I may,
please.
May I go off script here for a second?
Please.
Because I would like to do a college football stock up, stock down celeb shot and say Big 12 student section stock down.
Okay,
did you see what? Did you see what happened to CU? Did you see what's going on? They got fined. I believe it was 50,000.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. The Big 12 conference issued CU a public reprimand and a $50,000
They
fine
should have.
for inappropriate chants.
They had to say something because they were reprimanded by the conference. It's kind of, it reminds me of the Ryder Cup thing. I'm all for heckling. I think heckling is a part of sports, and if you can get into somebody's head, I think it's great. But we all know where the line is. If it's something you wouldn't say to somebody's face, had there not be, if not for 100 security guards and a giant wall in between you two, then you shouldn't say that at all. And part of me thinks, how many times you hear me say this now? I think once a year we need to have malice in the past. I think you need to take somebody who says something like that. You let the athlete go through that rope. He beats the snot out of that guy for about 5 minutes. As a warning to everybody else, the things that you say to me would be very different if it were not in this setting.
A group of young kids that probably was intoxicated and high sounding taste. Maybe I should have said that as well.
You ever seen the little kid at the zoo that's banging on the gorilla glass? And the parents just let him do it. It's like you're kind of like harassing this animal. And had the glass not been there, are you going to let your child taunt that thing? Don't think so. It's the same thing when it comes to athletes, okay? You cannot allow people to taunt or heckle athletes to the point, if they said it to them in the street, they get punched in the face. Saying, hey, 45, you stink. Fine. Hey, 45. And you say what somebody said to Rory the other day? Can't happen.
When I was in CU marching band, we were told, you're representing the school, you're wearing the uniform, you got the emblem on your chest, you cannot say anything bad to other students. Even if there's a bad call on the field, you can't yell at the refs. So we had to come up with clever ways to express our distaste.
Yeah.
So if the refs threw a bad PI call or something, people in the band would yell, I respectfully disagree! And at the end of the fight song, instead of saying the chant that everybody else does, we had to say, Buffaloes, Buffaloes, go CU.
See? Well, you know what?
So it's possible.
You find a workaround. Yes.
Life finds a way.
Somehow, some way. Back after
Yeah, listen, I was one that stood up in favor of. The reason I stood up in favor of is pretty simple. If the powers to be don't want it for aesthetic reasons or competitive reasons, or hard to officiate, etc. But I've been involved in those meetings for a long time, and when all of a sudden health and safety was pulled into that, which might be the safest play in football, my bullshit nose kind of went up.
I want to tell you something right now. I am not doubting that Sean Payton believes everything that he just said. I'm not doubting that he thinks the Tush push is totally fine. No, I don't. I hate it. Can you do me a favor, though, Nelly? Can you back that up to the beginning of that clip? I'm going to tell you to pause at a certain point. So play that again?
Yeah, listen, I was one that stood up in favor of. The reason I stood up in favor of is pretty simple. If the powers to be don't want it for aesthetic reasons.
Why is that part important? Let's think. The second Sean Payton said, the powers that be don't want it. Do the powers that be in the NFL and Sean Payton, have they shared some disagreements in the past, let's say?
No.
The answer is, yeah, they have. They totally have. And, does Sean Payton take it, if he gets an opportunity, does he take a chance to kind of take a dig at that NFL league office whenever he gets the opportunity? Yeah, he pretty much does. I swear to you, maybe he thinks, and I'm sure he does, he thinks that the Tush push is an A-OK play. It's totally fine. I also think that he had a chance to stick it to the league because he knew that they had to get, 24 votes to get a new rule passed? And he would love to be the guy who stands in the way of the NFL trying to do something that they want to do.
And also, he had to take a wise crack at the double standard where they get off talking about safety.
I've been involved in those meetings for a long time, and when all of a sudden health and safety was pulled into that, which might be the safest play in football, my bullshit nose kind of went up.
Is that true, by the way, the safest play in football? Because I see a whole bunch of guys doing what you're exactly not supposed to do, which is eyes down off your target, crown of the helmet going right at somebody. I understand they aren't going a million miles an hour. But, Nelly, if you and me lined up in a three-point stance across from each other, and we slam the crown of our heads into the bodies of each other, I feel like that could cause a neck problem. Could it not?
I'm trying to remember when it was. I think it was like 2 seasons ago. I remember this. The Niners were playing a game against the Vikings, and they tried to run kind of a good value version of the Tush push with Brock Purdy, and he jumped up over the line, and some Vikings defender came in guns a-blazing and just crowned him at the top of the head.
Yeah.
And he actually got minorly concussed, but it was one of those borderline ones that they didn't catch in the moment.
Right.
And you could see a stark drop-off of his stats.
And this was Brock?
Brock Purdy, yes. Before that play, he was balling. He had a couple touchdown passes. He was doing all right.
And
after
that,
and then he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn the rest of the game. And then after the game, the Niners came out and said, oh, yeah, he's got a concussion. You think? Because he's not Jalen Hurts. So don't try to run that play.
I went down this rabbit hole after the Alvarez-Crawford fight from a couple weeks ago, where I was just looking at both of those guys like their best knockouts of their career. And boxing is just so funny to me. Some guy gets rocked where he's very clearly got like baby deer legs. He gets back up, and instead of them having a concussion protocol, they go, I'm going to count to 10. I'm going to stop at 8. And I'm going to say, you all right? And if you can just say the word, huh? Then we're going to let you keep fighting. Football is just like, wait a minute. You blinked weird after getting hit. I need to sit you down for a second. Look, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. You should do that. It's just the difference between the two sports is crazy. But I want to go back to something from earlier. There was a texture that wrote this in. So I was talking about, if you remember that play that Marvin Mims bobbled that punt, but he called a fair catch. And the second he bobbled it, it was ripped away by the Browns guy. Forget who the Browns dude was. But the Browns special teams gunner ripped the ball away when it popped up in the air. And I go, damn, another special teams mistake. And then they huddled and called it kick-catch interference. How the hell is that not allowed? And a texter says this. I missed it. Hold, please. Oh, here we go. From Nick. Brett, when the player bobbles the ball, it doesn't have full possession yet, and it hasn't hit the ground. He must be given an opportunity to catch the ball. Because it didn't hit the ground, he must be given the opportunity. He was given the opportunity to catch it, and he bobbled it. To me, the second that you put hands on a football, that's now live. If you don't catch it, are you telling me that if that ball bounced directly off the top of his helmet and went straight up in the air, nobody could touch it still? Come on. That rule's got to change. I mean, it's so rare that it happens. But just for the record, it's got to change immediately. Because that's just straight up stupid. There is no reason why that should ever be not allowed. You call a fair catch, here's all that dictates. I get the opportunity to catch the ball cleanly without getting smoked. The second you bobble that thing, I think it's up for grabs for anybody who's around it. Anyway, some breaking news from the NFL. We kind of talked about this yesterday. Tony Grossi on his radio show in Cleveland said that he was told by a source that Dillon Gabriel is going to start. That is now official. To me, I wondered if they're going to start Dillon Gabriel, then what happened with Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco is going to be the backup, which means that Shedeur Sanders is, I think, put into that emergency role again. Because I don't know this for sure. I don't think that Cleveland's going into game day with 3 guys on the active roster. I think that Shedeur's inactive in that emergency quarterback role. But here's what's funny, Nelly. I was just thinking about this. Dillon Gabriel gets this start. If he has I don't know, he's probably going to be given a little bit of a leash here. Let's say 3 bad starts to kick this thing off. Maybe you consider going to Shedeur after that. I can't imagine they would go back to Flacco. I don't see the point. But do you remember the audio from Dion last week when he was talking? Oh, the Kelsey boys. And he said that there was a phone call from Baltimore on draft night, and Baltimore was going to take Shedeur, and he told him not to. And Dion goes, well, yeah, why wouldn't you? Why would you want to sit behind Lamar Jackson for 10 years? And I made the argument that it's like, well, I think for at least a couple of those, you could sit behind Lamar Jackson and learn a lot, because he's an MVP, 2-time MVP. Did you see the news yesterday? Lamar Jackson's going to be out, I think it's 2 to 3 weeks with that hamstring problem that he had last week when he got pulled from the game. If Shedeur Sanders was drafted by Baltimore, he would be a starting quarterback in the league now.
I don't know, man. I don't think he can go toe-to-toe with Cooper. Big-time rush, baby. Cowboys legend.
You know what I'm saying? Like, especially like if you were Dion did this, but he was allowed to. Dion knew he was going to be like a top 5 pick. He didn't talk to the team at 10 because he said, I'm not going to be there. Now, I would have advised Dion, well, maybe they'd trade up to take you. It's worth a conversation. But he was ultimately right. He was taken really early in the draft, and it didn't matter. But when you're in the 5th round and somebody gives you a phone call saying, I'm going to draft you, I don't think you can tell them no. The only thing you should say then is thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And had he done it, he would have started this week. Got some things on film, and then maybe became trade bait for somebody else, if not in the middle of this season, in the offseason. A lot of times that's what teams try and do, by the way. You draft a quarterback in these mid-rounds, even when you have one already, to first of all have a solidified backup. But second of all, if you draft somebody, like, think about what the Patriots did for years, what they flipped Matt Castle for, what they flipped Jimmy Garoppolo for, what they flipped Jacoby Brissett for. They did that all the time. I mean, they drafted Ryan Mallett, flipped him. Like, this is just what smart teams do who have the luxury of not absolutely needing like a 4th or 5th round pick. You draft someone, you stash them away, and then you try and get some value for it down the line. Because everybody loves a backup quarterback. So we get more to this a little bit later. We have, I want to talk about some baseball later as well. Ohtani crushes 2 homers in that first game of the postseason. Dodgers win. So just a quick recap if you guys missed the baseball from yesterday. The Tigers hang on for a 2-1 win in Cleveland. Chicago wins at home against San Diego 3-1. Boston comes back from being down to the Yankees late in that game to win 3-1. And then the Dodgers crushed Cincinnati 10-5. So a lot more to get to. You can watch the show live on Twitch, twitch.tv, search Altitude SR in the search bar, the Altitude TV simulcast. That is the Safeway Twitch feed. Download Safeway's deals and delivery app to get exclusive grocery offers, Safeway fresh foods, local flavors. You can also watch on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and don't miss anything from Denver's #1 sports station, Altitude Sports Radio 92.5. Moser, Lombardi, and Kane next.